The conversation today ran a little bit long. Go figure. It's not like I'm long winded or anything, right? Anyway, I actually split this into two parts, with part one airing this week and part two airing next week. Now, without further ado, enjoy the show. Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. Join me for some honest, unscripted discussions with other CRNAs who are transforming their financial lives. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today. And now, on with the show. Welcome to another Provider Spotlight episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and my guest today is a CRNA, devoted husband and father, and he just so happens to be dabbling in several different investment types to help speed up his path to financial freedom. Matthew Newton has experience with co-founding and running his own anesthesia business, executive leadership, and as a volunteer with Camp Kudzu, a nonprofit organization that helps to educate, inspire, and empower children with diabetes. He and I have had several conversations over the last year, and what strikes me is that despite our differing backgrounds and totally different career paths, we both have a similar mindset when it comes to investing and building our wealth. Now, I'm excited to have him here, so let's just get right to it. Matthew, welcome to the show today, bud.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Well, as I often do on these episodes, I like to start off with the past. So would you mind sharing some of your journey with us? Starting with your transition to 1099 work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I originally started, I graduated back in 2015, and I took a job at a major hospital like most CRNAs do when they get out. And, we had a pretty decent schedule, but what it did was it left me a lot of free days. So I kind of looked at what the hospital was paying, and I said, hey, maybe I can make a couple extra bucks here and there if I did something on the side on my own. When you get out of school, you're always trying to pay off your student loans as fast as possible. So at the time, that was kind of my driver. I didn't have a family, or, I just moved to a new city, so I had a lot of time on my hands. So I found two like-minded CRNAs that kind of all had the same idea. And we started a little LLC and just started kind of talking to some of the local plastic surgery clinics and GI centers in the area and said, hey, we have three fantastic CRNAs that are looking to do some 1099 work. Do you have any, do you guys need any extra help? And sure enough, they said yes. And we just started doing that. And I remember back when we first got our company started, and I remember going, guys, oh my gosh, we have 6 days of work this month for the three of us on the side. This is going to be fantastic. We were just so excited. And it was a lot of fun. And we started off small, just like that. After a while, 6 days turned into 8 days to 10 days. And then it got to, we would work 3 days at the hospital, and, the other 2 days of the week, we would all be at, one of these clinics because they loved the service we provided. A couple other local CRNAs kind of got wind and were like, hey, we're interested in helping out and doing some of the same things. So we said, okay, well, we already have the company structure set up because we made sure we wanted to get a strong foundation. So we said, well, come on with us, and we'll let you do some 1099 work. This other CRNAs kind of jumped in. They'd pick up a day or two here and there to 1099 work. We'd pay them well. We'd treat them well. We'd let them pick their schedules. And, our biggest thing was we wanted CRNAs to feel appreciated. We wanted to be not necessarily the employer, but the employer that we would want to work for. So, a lot of the guys really seemed to enjoy it. And it kind of grew from there. After a while, that was kind of our plan B going forward. After a while, it got so popular and we had so much of a demand that we decided that we couldn't maintain our full-time job while still having our our side gig. So eventually our plan B turned into our plan A.
Yeah. Yeah.
All three of us kind of left our setting that we were in, started getting some long-term contracts, and went and worked for ourselves. And it was great. And we set out once again to be the people that we would want. Everybody's had that job where, they've had, okay, well, I would change this. I would change this, but now is our time to actually do it. So we said, let's see if we can do this and make people enjoy being a CRNA to where you're not ever going, man, I just got to go to the hospital and work today.
Yeah.
We want you to be excited to go do your passion. That's what we all went to school for. That's what we love. So we wanted everyone to come love doing anesthesia again. Yeah. So everybody we worked with, we just tried to kind of keep that momentum going.
Now, I mean, that sounds great. That sounds like sunshine and roses. So, but there were some speed bumps along the way, right? I mean, there had to be something or some things that happened along the way that were obstacles that you had to overcome. So talk about some of those, if you would.
There's a lot of speed bumps, and it's funny because the speed bumps never come in the form that you think they would. Like, you assume with anesthesia, it's issues in the operating room, it's medical thing. It's running a business is a lot of work. I was blessed with two fantastic partners that are amazing CRNAs, and they're great business partners. The three of us could not have been more different, but we all had one goal in mind. We all had the same morals, ethics, and values, and it was wonderful. What I was good at, my other partner may not have been good at. What one of my other partners had a strength in, I maybe had a weakness in. We all complemented each other so well. And it worked good. One of our partners had amazing contacts in the area. One of my other partners was fantastic with numbers, was fantastic with negotiating. Me personally, I was pretty good with logistics and scheduling and managing people. And it just, we just clicked, and we didn't plan it that way, but we clicked, and it worked so well. My biggest speed bump, there's always a million successes and failures. Yeah. My biggest speed bump, honestly, was my time management personally. So when you own a company and it's your baby, you know what it's like.
Yeah.
you pour every waking hour into it. So, after, I think by our second or third year, we were really just go. And, at that time I had gotten married, and life was kind of going full force. So trying to juggle a relationship, my anesthesia company and everything else, it was a handful. So I got into a bad habit of, at all times of the day, I was available. You could text me and you get a text right back. You email me, you get an email right back. I don't care if it was 4 a.m, if it was 12 at night. And that was my own personal thing. I had a bad habit where I didn't have any boundaries. Mm-hmm. And honestly, the boundaries that eventually began affecting my life to where I would come home and I'd be on my phone at dinner working. I'd be on my computer working, and work. Our company grew significantly to be multiple states and a lot of CRNAs, nurses, office staff. And there was a lot of management, and with anything like that, there's always problems that arise, and I was always available to fix the problems, which is a good and a bad thing. A lot of times, I hate to say, if you let a problem sit there for a minute, it'll fix itself.
Yeah, and there's good and bad to being available like that. It's great for your business because you can respond very, very quickly and kind of nip things in the bud, but at the same time, you're kind of burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, and it's exhausting. You get tired, you get sick, you don't take vacations. Self-care is a very important thing. So eventually, me and my wife had a conversation, like most good ideas in my life, it comes from my wife.
Yeah.
We had a conversation where she's like, I see you come home every night and you're stressed out and you're busy and you work. And she's like, and at our point in life right now, that's okay, but could you be happier if you maybe changed some things? And I said, you know what, I could. So what I started doing was I started saying, okay, well, I am now available to be reached by email. I check my email twice a day, every day, whether I was working, no matter what I was doing. I checked my email at about 10 or 11 o'clock. I responded to all my emails. I would check my email again at about 8:30 at night. And that was that. If it happened in the middle, I tended to not respond, because unless it was just a dire emergency or something, but I set those boundaries where, okay, I'm available twice a day. And then most of the time I would find out if I had problems in the emails in the morning that happened just after I had checked them, they'd usually be resolved on their own by the time I got back to them. The other big thing I did was when I get home, I put my phone down. It goes on the charger. It goes on do not disturb mode. And from whatever time I got home until 8:30 at night, I was unreachable unless it was a dire emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So, and honestly, those two little things improved my quality of life. They improved my relationships. They improved everything. They improved my work. I wasn't doing redundant work. I wasn't coming home being tired. I wasn't getting burned out. It improved everything, and just the flow of me personally and my business so much.
Yeah, that's so cool. And I mean, that's something that I've struggled with too. I have trouble putting the phone down, like you always try to respond to people, but I'm also trying to set boundaries and have people understand that, like, no, if you text me or something, I may not respond like within 2 seconds, it's just you can't do it, and juggle everything in your personal life as well. And I mean, for instance, I was at my brother's graduation this last weekend, and I was on my phone. Now, granted, my dad was sitting next to me, and I wasn't doing anything business related. This was actually to just get my mom on a live stream. But like, it's such a difference in generations, because I'm on my phone and I'm trying to accomplish something, and my dad's like, put your phone away, man. And I'm just like, wait a second. I'm doing something that's intentional and good, but it's so easy to fall into that trap, and I mean, this was an instance, obviously, that I was talking to my mom. So she wanted to be a part of what was going on, but still, like, that could have very easily been me responding to somebody on LinkedIn, sending me a message, or, whatever the case may be. And I had my phone on me, and I would have responded to it, and that's just the way it was. So I love that you're talking about these boundaries that you have to set for yourselves, and the structure that you kind of have to set up to allow for that better time management. So, is there anything else you do differently? If you were starting this business again from scratch, what else would you do?
So real quick story, and I'm gonna get to that.
Sure.
You reminded me of one of the best moments I had for my boundary setting, which was like, okay, I need to do something. I remember my wife and I were getting ready to get married, and we were registering at Crate and Barrel, and there was a CRNA contractor that I was trying to land, because I always like to work with good people. You can always find a butt for a seat to push propofol, but finding the right person that enjoys what they do, that good quality CRNA, is really hard. And there was one I was courting forever, trying to get them to come over. And I remember I was on my phone, and we're at Crate and Barrel, and we're doing it, and and time just goes by real fast. And I remember him saying, "Yes, I'm going to go ahead and help you guys out." And I remember going, "Yes, honey, I got so-and-so. I'm so excited." And I looked over, and she's going, just giving me this look. And I was like, I need to put this phone down. Huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I'm done for the day. You know what? Like, I'm going to take the rest of the day off. Let me help. Let's go do this. Let's go find some China patterns or some silverware.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, it's hard to kind of segment your time like that when the business doesn't stop and your personal life doesn't stop. So you really do have to have those hard boundaries around the different times in your life where, hey, this is my time and I'm at my kid's track meet and I'm not answering anything because I'm fully invested in my kid right now. And the reverse can be true, like with the business. And I've had to do this recently where, my wife will come home in the middle of the day and it's like, I'm working on my business right now. Like, I love you. I can't sit down and have a 20-minute conversation with you about what we're doing later on tonight. Like, we'll have that conversation later. I have work that I got to do, and so it is a tough thing to kind of establish when you're first trying it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so you asked me if I would have actually changed anything that I've done. Honestly, I wouldn't have changed any of my path, because you know what? I have had many successes along the way, and for every success, I've had 10 failures. Mm-hmm. And every last one of those failures was an important lesson. I always say, it's one of those, if you're not failing, you're not trying. If you're not taking risks, you're not trying. It's a matter of, do you get up is what decides if it's actually a failure. Because if you always get up, then it's not a failure, it's a lesson. And I've learned many hard lessons in my path to get to kind of where I'm at today. And every last one of them has built character and taught me something that I won't forget, and I think it's very, very important.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned risk and everything else. We're going to get to some of this risk tolerance stuff here in a little bit, but I want to get back to the story of this business. So, you have this business, it's going great. I know that you aren't a part of that anymore. And that you guys have moved to a different area. So what happened? What was the story there?
So honestly, it's all great things. So our company grew and it grew and it grew and it grew. We had a great reputation in the area. Everybody loved working with us. But honestly, I always take everything down to what's that one thing. Remember City Slickers from back like 92, where they said, what's the meaning of life? And the guy holds his finger up and he says, it's that one thing. The reason I went the way I did was because my one thing was kind of calling. And my one thing, my biggest driver in life is family. Mm-hmm. My goal has always been at the end of the day, it's not a paycheck, it's not a lifestyle, I want a family. I want my wife, I want my parents, I want my cousins, I want my children, and I want them to all be together. So my company was taking a lot of my time and a lot of my attention, as it should. Mm-hmm. And me and my wife finally got to talking, and we have always kind of wanted to live closer to where our son can grow up near his grandparents, and that's in Georgia. So, we discussed expanding the company down in Georgia, but ultimately me and my wife said, you know what, for the next couple of years, let's just see if we can find something that's a little more conducive to our schedules. So she found a fantastic job where she's not working 7 days a week. She has a great job at a local hospital down here. And I decided to leave the company because if I would have come down and had to expand all of the infrastructure I'd set up in North Carolina, would have still been there, but it wouldn't have really helped too much down here in Georgia. So it would have been back to square one, to where emails all hours of the day. And, so it's one of those, like, people will be like, why would you sell your part of the company? And it's like, well, heavy does lie the crown, if you think about it. Mm-hmm. And I know it would have bought me another 2 years of hustling and knocking on doors and starting, getting new relationships and all that going. So starting from scratch is always challenging. So we decided to walk away and come down here to Georgia. So I found I got very lucky that one of my kind of third-party contractors, has a large anesthesia company in Georgia. And I kind of went and talked to them, and, they had a split administrative and anesthesia role that was perfect for me. And at this point in my life, it's absolutely perfect. The biggest and best thing is I have flexibility with my schedule. So I'm able to be the father and the husband I want, which is just absolutely amazing. And the group I work with now, they're wonderful people. I'm probably at the happiest point of my life, and that's great because I'm getting my one thing. I'm getting my time with my family, and I'm getting my satisfaction in my career. Everything's going pretty great, I got to say, at the moment.
Yeah. Well, and I love that success for you isn't just about the paycheck. It's not about how much money you make, because obviously, you were making good money with your own anesthesia business, but you mentioned some of the trouble that you can have being in charge. It's very different, being the owner of a business versus being an employee. And there are a lot of problems that you have to, a lot of fires that you have to put out as a business owner. And so, kudos to you for finding some of that balance. And I think that's a great lesson for a lot of people that are probably listening. If you're in a job that's not making you happy, that's sucking your soul away, like, anesthesia's got so many different career paths that you can take. You don't have to stay in that one place where you're not happy. You can go find something better for you and your family and the lifestyle that you want. So I think it's awesome.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Like I always say, people take a job for a handful of reasons. One of them's pay, one of them's location and hours, and one of them's environment. and it's hard to find all three, but you should always be striving for it. Like in anesthesia as a CRNA, there's never a reason to hate your job. If you find yourself dragging where you're just like, oh, I dread going into work, it's time for a change. The only reason you hate your job is because you're allowing yourself to. You can literally do anything and everything. There's so much mobility. If you like to travel with anesthesia, you can travel. If you like to stay in one place, you can work autonomously. You can work in groups. You can do so many different things. And so, like I said, I love seeing CRNAs love what they do. Like it always breaks my heart a little bit when I would go to a site and I'd see, downtrodden CRNAs.
Yeah.
I'm like, the grass really is greener, and you just need to find your green, like identify those drivers in life and figure out what you really want. Like, cause you know what, if you don't need the money, if that paying your loans off or whatever is not your driver and it really is something like family, reevaluate your situation and make the changes, set up a plan and see if you can get to where you need to get to be the happiest. You only get one life. Mm-hmm. You might as well have the biggest smile while you're doing it.
Yeah. Well, but you touched on something there that I want to, go back to. It's, if money's not an issue, and I can't tell you how many, CRNAs that I worked alongside where, they would be doing something else or, like with their time, if they didn't feel like they were trapped in their particular position, like it, and it is kind of that lifestyle creep that some people do have. I've had it, where you make more money than you ever have before, but you're also, living a more highfalutin lifestyle. It's just, you're spending more money. The changes that I've made since I stopped doing anesthesia, I don't shop a whole lot at some of the grocery stores in town. I'll go to these other ones, and I save tons of money. It's like I'm paying half the price for groceries, the same groceries I'd get somewhere else, so it's just funny though, because we do feel sometimes like we're trapped in a job because of financial constraints, and whether it's, hey, I'm going to work for another 10 years and get my kids through school. Hey, you know what? That's a goal. And I admire that you're willing to sacrifice that for your kids. But yeah, why not look around? What, especially now, with all the different types of anesthesia that can be provided in all these different types of environments, you at least owe yourself to, the chance to look around a little bit.
It's funny you talk about money. So money in general is a really interesting thing. And I guess everything in life is all about perspective. So in a previous life, before I kind of really got into my anesthesia company, me and my wife I used to like to go, we do a lot of vacations. So one of our easy go-to vacations was Las Vegas. And, as a CRNA, you had an extra $1 or $2, and I had the happiest place on earth was beside a craps table with my family.
I love craps, man.
And like, oh, I lost some money. Nah, not a big deal. Blah, 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 blah. And it's funny because I remember talking to one of my business partners who's a little more cost conscious on things, and he was like, "Oh, you lost that much money? Like, you could have done more with that money if you invested it." And I remember going, So flash forward to nowadays where I am looking at investments, and I realize just how valuable these investments can be. Me and my wife were talking the other day, and she's like, "You want to do a vacation really quick, like maybe to Las Vegas?" And I'm like, "God, I kind of hate to waste that money, but I could be, that couple of grand could be going towards something yes, but it definitely won't be the way I used to do it, And you think about just these little tweaks you have on your life where you're like, well, there's $5,000 there, $5,000 there. That Starbucks you get every day is $3. Like, you look at all these ways that you're like, maybe I can cut a corner and I can pinch a penny here and there, and that little tiny investment can turn into something big. You get that elusive mailbox money coming in, and it gets really addicting.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned being intentional about these decisions that you make now. That when we're younger, maybe not as intentional. My wife and I, when we first got together, double income, no kids, so we lived on one income and we saved the rest. And that was our thing, and that kept me from budgeting. So I've never really budgeted my money because we always paid ourselves first. And so after we paid ourselves, it's like, well, then the rest of it's just, whatever we want to do with it. And we can have, our trips to Orlando or Las Vegas or wherever. And And actually, you mentioned Las Vegas. So my wife and I went to Las Vegas, and we joke about it because we came back with somebody else with an extra, because that's, my son was conceived in Las Vegas, and so his middle name is Dean, for Dean Martin. So, and he's going to hate that that's on video recording, by the way, when he gets older, but hey, what do you do? He may never hear this one, but
I love it. I love it.
So, but yeah, I mean, like when I think about going back and doing, anything like that now, I think about it and it's like, okay, well, we'd go back and I'd introduce the kids to the shows and all of the family friendly stuff, because my life is different than it was, 7, 8 years ago, because I've got 3 kids now. I'm not looking for the parties and to spend all kinds of cash. And, I am looking more towards taking care of my family and setting things up for them. So, I commend you. We're going through similar paths in life, I think. And that's where you and I have had such great conversations, and we are kind of a similar mindset, but kind of get back to, the role that goal setting has actually had in some of these different parts of your life, and how that's shifted over the years, maybe.
So I've, me and my wife, we have a wonderful relationship. A couple times a year, we always sit down and we set goals. We're like, so this point in our year, like, what are we trying to do quarter 1, quarter 2? And it's not always perfectly structured, but we always talk about what are we looking to do? What's our retirement plan? How are we going to get there? And what do we want to accomplish this year? So we sit there, we map out our vacations 6 months to a year in advance. We talk about how's your 401k doing, because while I was working with my anesthesia company, I maxed out my 401k. I did anything like, as no financial advice here, but maxing out your 401k is just easy. It's easy, usually free money if your company matches it, especially. So I was like, okay, well, we're both maxing out our 401k. What can we do now? And this is probably 2018, 2019 or so. And I've always wanted personally to get into real estate. I've heard all these different podcasts. I've talked to people, and everyone's like, "Oh, real estate. And what a great!" And I'm like, "I'm going to do this." So I did what any good person that was in a planning phase did, and I bought a bunch of books, and they sat on my shelf forever, and I didn't read them. And I said, "I'm going to listen to all these podcasts," and they didn't get listened to. And but I'm going to do it. I'm absolutely going to do this. Right. I'm definitely, I'm really good at preparing to do things. You should see my hiking equipment that I don't use. I'm very good at preparing and getting ready to do stuff. And then coronavirus happened. And
there was so much great information in our discussion today. I really didn't expect to get into a discussion on boundaries, but it's an important point. Boundaries can truly allow you to be more present in each moment of your life. Not to mention, it helps you hold on to your sanity. Matthew also talked about educating himself before his first foray into real estate while leaning on the expertise of others. He had an idea of the concepts that he wanted to implement. Then he found a team to help him execute his vision. I've often seen the meme where your Google search doesn't equal my nursing degree and years of experience. And the same applies with other professionals outside of healthcare. But too often we try to take on everything ourselves, only to become exhausted before we really even get started. It's something to think about anyway. That's going to do it for this week. If you'd like to get a hold of Matthew, make sure you check out the show notes for his information. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you share it with a friend and give us a 5-star review on your podcast player. If you're interested in gaining access to passive income opportunities through real estate, make sure you visit my website at www.oncallinvestments.com or hit me up on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. We'll see you for part 2 next week. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.